way they can.
Okay.
Okay, so anyhow, welcome, week 2,
Woohoo!
strategic business. And it's been great seeing all your comments in the discussions. Hopefully you saw my comments back to you. Were you able to see my response, replies to the things that you said? Okay, good. Good. Since I didn't hear any responses back, I wasn't sure if I was going into a black hole, kind of like what you were doing today. Anyhow, week 2, we're going to talk about strategic business etiquette. And as always, we got our cameras on. We're a small enough group that we can just, either interrupt, wave wildly on the screen, or use the chat if you have anything that you want to add or you want to say. The same thing that I shared last week, I want to share again. We're going to have some fun. Look, we already started with fun. 20 minutes of I don't know how to get in. So that was loads of fun. And then we're going to, and again, my hope is that you find some nugget in here that you can apply to the workplace. And I have a plethora of information, but you also bring great wealth of knowledge in your business life and your personal life that you can add so that we can really share with each other. So this isn't me talking at you, this is us sharing. And I always get a nugget too, so it's not a one-way nugget gathering, okay? So course map, we are to strategic business. We're working our way through the map. And the things we're going to talk about today is we want to talk about the cultural differences that we have to deal with in our workplace. And if you don't have cultural differences, when we get to that topic, we can talk about it. Then we're going to talk about the multi-generational workplace that we have. And how do we actually communicate with that, with others that are not of our generation? And then we're going to talk about the communications between both cultural as well as generations, so that we can really play nice in the sandbox. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. So our learning objectives is we're going to assess the cultural influences. I have an interesting graph that kind of takes the world and divides it up by color. And where your cultural bearings come from has a lot to how our personalities and our communication styles relate. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about the differences. And like I said, we're going to talk communication. All right, so I guess we'll start with this. What type, if any, of multicultural interaction do you currently have? What's going on in your workplace?
Okay. I don't know, like we are in the back office a lot, so we pretty much interact with like our peers.
So they're not of different cultures. They're all from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, mostly people from Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I have one when we were in the office full time. We no longer are, but she is Korean,
Okay.
Yeah.
Korean, Chinese. I'm not sure what her nationality is, but there's definitely a language adjustment that we've had to make, not only with her speaking, but with her emails. And Tara, I know does Julie email you at all?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
They tend to leave words out of email or add words in where they don't belong. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And I have to read 2 or 3 times to actually understand what she's trying to say.
So you bring up an interesting point. You bring up the English as a second language barrier for one. So that's definitely a cultural difference. But even if she spoke perfect English, she brings her Korean culture. If you, again, assuming she's Korean, she brings a culture, and we're going to talk about how the Asian culture, again, everybody's different. So this isn't about, but you have to start with a bucket and then work down to getting a relationship with the individuals. But there are certain things that people bring to the table, and they just were raised that way. That's the way that they think. And so therefore, if you're in a more diverse multicultural area, it may jump out at you differently because, you know, if you only have Julie, then, you know, and not everybody deals with Julie, you know, it's a little different. So we're going to still talk about it because it's important to understand where everybody is, their lenses, but we'll spend more time if you want on the generational differences, because I'm assuming, tell me if I'm wrong, there are more than your type people that look and act like you in your office or your clients.
I could, I would say no.
Really?
So we,
Because of the call center?
call center, our frontline, our members, we have come from a diverse, we have a diverse group of people in our back, and even in our back office, we have a diverse group of people. So I'm African American. You know, we have people who are we have a person who's Asian descent, but she is more of the Indian Asian descent. She just joined in the call center. Her name is Geeta, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So, you know, seeing her, she's new. So we do have diversity in our company. So you, right, you're saying looking from, now that you're talking about looking things at different perspectives, different lenses, I look at things, view things in an African American interaction with our people, our members. You know, you talk to your own, not say race or anything like ethnicity different, but you empathize a little differently in certain aspects versus your counterparts. It all depends. You know what I mean? Depends on how you were raised, where you were raised. I was born and raised in Philadelphia all my life. So predominantly I come from a African American demographic. When I was in high school, I had more of white counterparts. And when I got into college and then work, it exposed me to different variety of people. I had Asian Americans, Indian Americans, Native Americans, so Korean Americans. So it's all sort of diversity, just change progressively. As you got older, you have one group most of your life. And then when you get older, it gets more multicultural.
Excellent. Tara, hold that thought. Does anybody know Danielle Timbo?
She's from Nottingham.
So you would know her address to give her the link that I just sent you?
I don't know her email address.
Okay. I don't have the link on my phone, so I can't help her at all. I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's okay.
Make you smaller and see if she sent it here. I can. It's the Zoom that I use for you. Okay. All right. So we'll get her in. So Tara, you make a great point about we start with the smallest family unit. And so therefore, everybody that you talk to day in and day out is in that small little world. And then if there's a religious affiliation, then the next thing is you start interacting with still like type people, but it's not mom and dad and aunt and uncle. And then it gets bigger and bigger as we become adults. And again, we're not going to talk, this class isn't about generations, the deep dive into generations, but the influences that we have from 0 to 21 is just amazing. And as you talk to researchers who just divide us up. So all four of us currently on the phone, we all came from different places. Even if everybody else came from Philadelphia, I grew up in Chicago and then spent most of my adult life in Southern California and then moved to Pennsylvania. So different from somebody that was born and bred in Philadelphia, not better, just different. And so therefore, again, we talked about lenses, the lenses are different. Put on top of that, somebody that is brand new in the workplace, they're 18 years old compared to somebody that's 55 years old. So you have that piece too. And then you throw on Julie with the Korean elements and what she brings to the table from her cultural perspective. So we've got Elle. I don't know who Elle is, but we'll find out in a second who's joining us. So we're going to talk about how we as Americans see and communicate. And then we're going to talk about how other cultures in the world do. And then we're going to actually get into the generational part.
Mhm.
So we just stuff to cover. All right. So again, this is the academic side. The Lewis model is a model that is the tried and true. If you're going to talk about how people at a very high level with no emotional connection to who they are sliced and diced. So I think you guys can see the color grid. And if you look at the bottom left, it says linear active. Linear active, if you can see, the United States is right up there with the UK. So it's typically the two on either side that is, if you had to drill down, it would be like they are the key linear active. And that is, they're cool, they're factual, they're decisive, they're planners. So let's go over to the far, far left, which would be our Julie, for example, which is the reactive. Is they're very courteous, they're very friendly, they'll compromise, they'll accommodate, they listen well. I work with a company in Japan, and it took me, you have to build trust, but it took me a long time to understand that even though they were saying yes and nodding, they didn't agree, because culturally, you never, ever offend. I mean, it's so ingrained into who they are that they couldn't offend. And then when you build trust, and then, as you cross, you work together for years, the cultures on both sides kind of spill over. But that would be probably my biggest example of, if you did have to work with somebody, and again, I don't know Julie from anybody, but Julie may be quick to just nod and agree, even though she may want to say, I have no idea what you're talking about, so again, it's a cultural, component. And then when you go to the very, very top, it's the, I have to move my things. It is the other one. Can anybody read the top big red circle, something active?
Multi-active.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
So if you look at it and think about if you've traveled in other places, they are very warm, they're emotional, they're talkative, they're impulsive. So, and again, categorizing, the Italy, Portugal, Spain. And if you are American, born and bred, but you are raised in an Italian, culture, then even though you may fall into the United States category, you may have been conditioned to be some of the higher red colors. Does that make any sense?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So the first part of understanding culture is that, before anybody even opens their mouth, we do our 7 seconds of judgment. We make our opinions like we talked about last week. And then we start communicating with people. And this should be in the back of your mind. If again, you don't want to stereotype, but at the same time, that if you're trying to conduct business with somebody in Japan and they keep saying yes, the right answer as an American is to find out what yes means to them, to confirm timeframes. So it's not saying that they're just bad, but you just want to make sure that you just don't walk away from a business agreement thinking that you got it covered, because Charlie, who lived in Reading, Pennsylvania his whole life, when he says, yeah, Charlie's going to do it. So it's just something to keep in your mind, and your arsenal of etiquette is to understand, again, using the reactive yellow, that is their culture to be very, very, very accommodating. And they won't follow through because they just couldn't publicly say no. Okay. All right. So if you want to take it and drill it down a little deeper, and again, I'm using each of them separately. We as linear communicators, we talk half the time. We love to talk. I don't know if we had an opportunity last week to take a deep dive into the 7 second silence, but Americans, typically US and UK, struggle with pauses. We love to fill the air. So there's an exercise that I would encourage you to do When you're dealing with people, obviously a call center, I wouldn't encourage you to do this with the clients because they wouldn't have any idea why. They'll be like, hello, you still there? You still there? But with people that you're face to face with, you may want to try it at, when you're having a conversation and you really want to find out what somebody thinks, pause and count. It's not a long 7 seconds, but 1, 2, all the way to 7 with nothing, that you don't say anything. And the person goes, we go through, 7 steps. 1 is, she asked me a question. Ooh, she asked me a question. 2, do I know the answer to the question? 3, ooh, it sounds like she might want a response. 4, what is my response? 5, I think I got a good response. I don't think I'm going to sound stupid. 6, all right, nobody else is going to speak. 7, I talk. Okay, so as a courtesy, as again, from somebody from the United States, we need to give people that opportunity because we talk half the time. We just love to talk. And so something to think about as we're communicating with other folks. We're great planners. We are organized. I already have my calendar set for where I'm going to be at Christmas time. And I'm probably going to start next week on where I'm going to be starting first quarter of 2024. So I don't know if I see some head shaking that you guys might agree. That is not true for every culture. So keep that in mind. We're polite, but we're direct. We call it like we see it. Let me just tell you that. And even if we say it in a polite, non-threatening tone, we're pretty direct. So, and again, a lot of cultures aren't that way. We confront things with logic. Well, it just makes sense to me. So let me just share it with you. So we justify the behavior that we have because it's logical to us. We're very job oriented. And even when we get into the generations, there is still a job focus that's different than the rest of the world. We like facts. Tell me the facts. Let's go over the facts. We built this country on, taking facts and putting it in a policy and procedure book on top of it. So P&P is our Bible. We're very results oriented. I want to get it done. I'm going to work out at the gym this morning. I'm going to do 45 minutes on the treadmill. I'm going to, we're very results oriented. And we're very good at sticking to an agenda. If we have a 1-hour meeting, except for today, and I apologize for that, we started at 5:30. We would all be there at 5:30. At 7 o'clock, we go on our merry way. And that is not, again, a cultural, it's more cultural for us. What we write is important. So Julie, your Korean friend, it's important that she say it clearly. And, she's struggling because of her English, translation from her language into English and then trying to figure out how to put those words on paper. But we look at the written word it's very important to us. And even if we use our text, we still think that's really important. And then we're very restrained with our body language as a general rule. And again, if you've been to Italy, we're talking about with the hands, and there are other cultures that also use gestures, differently than we do. And again, if you're American born and bred, but your family brings that culture over, then you will have some of those things. Any questions? I know I covered a lot of stuff on that. Okay. All right. So then we're going to talk about the multi-active. And again, we're talking, Canada, Chile, Italy, Russia, Saudi Arabia. They also talk a lot. They do several things at once though. And their plans are in an outline. It's like, I'm going to go to the gym today. I have 6 steps going to the gym. They're just going to go to the gym. Okay. Very emotional. So it's not emotional like where they're hard on, no, I shouldn't say that. They are emotional. They will share emotional feelings with you. So sometimes it makes people uncomfortable if that is not either a culture that they're used to or something that they do.
Excuse me.
Very people oriented, sitting around and having a cup of coffee for 3 hours is okay. We take our coffee and go. Again, feelings before facts. I really want Sherry to like me. I want to spend time with Sherry to get to know me. And then we'll give all the details later. So we're a little, in the moment, and this group tends to be over time. I'll get to it eventually. Sherry, just sit back, enjoy, we'll get to it. Again, relationship oriented, very important to build a relationship in order for any kind of business to be done. And they go all over different tangents. We're more linear. We start with A, go to B, and end up with Z. And this is not necessarily the case for them. Again, for them, the spoken word is very important. So your intonations of your voice are really important. What you say, and again, I have a graph that's not in this class, but we talk about nonverbal is so important for us, but the spoken word, if you did that graph just for this group of people, the spoken word is a bigger driver than the nonverbal. And then again, like I said, very big on the use of body language. And then the last one, again, I don't know Julie, but I feel like by the time we're done with today, I'm going to get to know Julie. Again, very good listeners. They will listen intently. And it's not because it may be because they're translating it from English to their language so that they understand it, but it could also be culturally, they will, even if you were speaking Jerry Korean to her, she will listen to what you have to say. And then they react to our actions. And again, when I was working with Japan, the hierarchy is so tight. How you bow depends on who they are in the company. So you bow differently to the CEO than you do to the custodian. So there's, they have a hierarchy that is, almost like, the royal party. Very polite, very indirect. We'll dance around trying to say no. If you're dealing with somebody, again, Julie, I'm going to use Julie. Julie will not say, it will be hard pressed for her to come out with the word no in her conversation. So again, knowing this as you're having, or if you've got clients that are of, hey, I was in Hong Kong visiting my family kind of conversation, you may think about, no may not come out, readily. Again, very people oriented. When you make a statement, it's a promise. So they won't talk quickly, but when they do, that's their promise. Again, peace, we have to have harmony. And they often ask for repeats. And what that means is to over and over and over again. And, we say it once and you guys, you heard me. You want me to say it again? Okay. And then for this group, face-to-face contact is important. So even though social media is so prevalent in other countries, this is still not their go-to. I mean, this is joined at my hip. It's in my back pocket or on my desk. And which is hard to believe because 15 years ago, we didn't have them and now I can't get rid of it. They're also very subtle with their body language. They know, again, another person from Korea, for example, will understand the sitting back, the nonverbals, they get it. And, sometimes we just miss it. Okay, so those are the three buckets that I would put us in. This sheet's in your workbook, so we won't take a real deep dive into it. So let me ask you, we'll go back. Do you have a place if you had to put yourself on the model where you would fall? Again, I talked about, we start with US because we're here, but do you have a cultural piece that drives you to another color?
I do not.
No?
No.
Okay, anybody else?
I would say me is red for me. Anybody who knows me, I'm warm, emotional, talkative. I'm not impulsive, but and I think that's because of my how I was raised. We're very emotional, expressive people. My family has always been warm. Everybody's family is warm, but there's a lot of gestures. There's a lot of gestures in my family, a lot of hand motions going on. So we do that a lot. And that's just how we were, how we are, how I was raised. So I definitely would say cool with some undertones of red, definitely.
Okay, interesting. That's great. Well, I'm an American three generations back, the influence of the Russian Slavic, deriving grandparent, had a play in my life. And now my daughter, the next generation, doesn't have as deep as that. So you may find, that it could be as strong as your generations move on, or it could start waning depending, again, the strength within the family bond. Anybody else?
I would
I
say,
changed my answer.
All right, let Peyton go next, and then you can go back, Sherry.
Fine.
I was gonna say, I'm also more towards the red color. My house is, well, my dad's side is very Italian. So we're kind of louder, emotional people. And I do talk with my hands a lot. Even when I talk on the phone, I'm always using my hands to gesture around.
Obviously, Tara has seen that.
Yeah. But yeah, very Italian, very emotional, louder, very talkative. I love having a good conversation.
So that 7-second pause will kill you.
I know it will.
Sherry, you said you're going to change your answer?
I do, because I should have paid more attention to the chart. I was strictly looking at United States and saying, well, I can't, I'm not from Korea or Thailand or India or anything like that. When I look at the key, I can actually combine all three of them
Okay.
into my personality. With me, it depends on who I'm dealing with.
Okay.
I work in accounting, so of course I'm very factual. I need the numbers to be right. With my friends, I'm warm, emotional, talkative, impulsive. And then with coworkers, I'd say I'm more yellow and blue.
Okay.
So I shouldn't have jumped so quickly to answer that.
No, I mean, it takes some time to think about it and digest it for sure. Elle, any thoughts? Am I saying it correctly? Is it Elle?
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Sherry said. I feel like depending on who I'm talking to, depends on how I go about that communication. But just in my own personal life, I definitely lean more red. My mom's side of the family is Hispanic. Grew up in a very tight-knit family. We were always getting together. And then I married an Italian man. Both sides of his family are from Italy. So I feel like that just kind of added fuel to the fire for that.
Well, and the key here in this graph is, we are not as clear as we're all purple, because we're not. And, again, we're as we get into the generations part, you're going to see that we're going to drill it down even farther, because again, the influence of our parents and our grandparents in our community is huge. So, but we have to pay attention because we have a go-to. So, yes, I believe we're all, if we really are conscious of who we're talking to, we could have all things. But I would throw out at you is that if you're in a stressful situation, there is one go-to, and it could be the Italian hands and the talking, or it could be I'm going to sit back and be reserved and just pay attention. So, it's, again, this is the reason that we're sharing this is because we're talking about strategic business and how we communicate and deal with others, deeper than just the etiquette part. All right, so let's go to multi-generations. So this is a little quiz. It's easy, I think. And this is called What Generation Are You? So we're going to start with, does anybody know what this is? All right, we got Tara saying yes, adamantly yes, Cherry shaking her head. All right, so the question, and I'll give you the answer in a second, is that this is a global thing today, but it started somewhere before it hit all of us mainstream. So it's Gen X. So those of you that are Gen Xers, and we'll talk about what generations you guys are. It's basically 1965 to 1980 is the generation that this game made us hate it. And it's kind of like Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers is everywhere, but it started
Yes.
today. All right, how about this? You first experience with color TV was watching Walt Disney World, Wonderful World of Color. What generation do you think that might be? Your parents, grandparents? Tara, what do you think?
Baby boomers, people were born in the late 50s or
Okay.
early
Anybody else have
50s.
any other thoughts? Do you agree with Tara?
I actually remember when we got our first color television.
As I do. I remember.
But
All right.
I'm definitely not in the 50s.
No, Sherry, but my mom used to talk about the wonderful world of Disney all the time. So that's why I
Yeah.
just want to say like late 50s, early early
Well,
60s.
the baby boomers are 1946 to 1964. So it was, yes, it was in the 50s when it started.
Yeah.
And again, one of the things about baby boomers is research companies just started to dissect us back. Oh, it's probably been 25 years. And they bucketed 1946 to 1964. That's a baby boomer. Well, you know what? In 1946, I wasn't even an inkling in anybody's eyes because I was born in 64. So I can't relate to the things that the 1946 people related to. So you'll find that as we move up in the generations, they are slicing and dicing the generations into smaller segments because, again, it's defining moments. And again, color TV was a defining moment. And that doesn't make it bad. It just means that somebody in 1946 would be maybe 10 years old when color television came out. I don't know how old it would be, but so again, it's a bucket. Again, baby boomers were the color TV. How about this? Sometimes at the airport, you yell, the plane, the plane.
I know that's from Fantasy Island.
Yes, great show.
Yes. I don't know. Was it Generation Y?
So that's like
Generation X?
mid 80s
Okay. So do you know that there's a new Fantasy
or
Island now?
70s? I do.
Yes,
They have remade the show. Yeah.
They have remade the show. And I watched it last night for the first time because I pulled up my slides and I thought I should go see what the new one's about. But the plane, Generation X,
Yeah.
65, 80.
Yeah.
And how about this? A period after a sentence in a text means don't bother me or this conversation is over.
I don't know. Generation
I
Y.
have never heard that.
Gen
Me
Z.
neither.
Well, I have to tell you, I had to really research each of these to try to find something that's in each generation. This generation is millennial. 1981 to 2000 is what they would define a millennial. And I actually, when I put this together, probably a couple of years ago, I asked some millennials and they say, oh my gosh, my parents, they write a full sentence when they text me and they end it with a period. So obviously there is a piece of the millennials that do not like this, but okay. All right, I think
I do that too.
you do what?
I do that. I write full sentences and I use punctuation and capitalization, and it drives my daughter crazy.
Ask her about the period at the end of the sentence.
Well,
I don't mean to get off topic or anything, but I don't see anything wrong with proper English when you know what I mean, when you're writing out things. Like, just spell it out. Don't give me those shorthanded things. I hate it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Well, and again,
U is Y-O-U, not the letter U.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sorry, guys.
So you're right. However, things change over time. Again, the baby boomer, and again, I'm going to bucket, the baby boomer learned how to write cursive and write a sentence every time you wrote a sentence, put a period at the end. You wrote a thank you note to, thank you so much for the $10 for Christmas for my, whatever it is. Thank you, with a period. So those habits carry over even though technology has changed. Think of the generation that never had to write a thank you note. Okay. So this isn't saying good or bad. This is just saying, so they grew up with this quick instant gratification of, that's why our emojis were born. because people were writing in email. And so it used to be communication. So you could tell if I was happy because I was telling you a story and I was laughing and you were laughing. And we knew kind of what it was. You put it in an email and people were interpreting the words you chose differently than the intent of the words. Okay. So then emojis were born to say, you know, like you never ever, and we'll talk about it in writing and verbal, but you never ever all cap anything that you send to anybody. Okay, but way back when this first started, people would do that because they wanted to make a point. So now they have the emojis to kind of give you the, hey, I'm tongue in cheek, and or I'm clapping, or whatever the emoji is that you decide to use. So again, it's morphing on the conversation of etiquette. And again, we're going to talk about it every week for the next 4 or 5 weeks. Is etiquette still comes down to making the person that you're communicating with the most comfortable. So if you were that generation person who liked to write you as the letter U versus YOU, and you were writing it to me, and yeah, I don't like YOU, you would, to be a proper etiquette is for you to make me comfortable and happy. You would put the Y and the O in there before you send it. Okay, does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, so here are the generational breakout. Now, the part that's interesting about it, because somebody will say, well, I was born in 64 and I don't have or 64 and I don't have any of the characteristics of a 64. I have more characteristics of a Gen X, or any of that. All these breakouts is made by a research company, and they use defining moments in time to define it. Okay, so, and again, we'll get into the numbers as to how many fall in each category, but the only one that has been defined by our government is the millennial, the Gen Y. They did a census thing, and in 1981 to 2000, the government has defined millennials as this. And you will find that many millennials, not that any of you guys would be saying it, is, oh my God, I don't want to be called a millennial. I want to be anything but a millennial. But there are so many different, because there's so many millennials. What happened to somebody in 1981 is so different than something that happened to somebody in 2000 and everything in between. So millennial, again, is a bucket, and there are smaller buckets that they've categorized. Research companies do this for a living. So let me slice and dice it smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay. All right, so any thoughts about what the last generation, so we got Gen Zs, 2000 to present. Well, present is really 2013. So what would be the next generation? What do you think? We used up our letters.
They revert to numbers then?
I'm sorry.
Would they revert to numbers?
Okay, that's your thought. Anybody else?
I've heard the term alpha for the next generation.
Okay, so the Greek alphabet is currently what is being used. So generation alpha is currently defined as 2013 to 2028, which again is a big bucket. So they're going to start, and again, you can't slice and dice the kids until you can start doing research to them. So it's not going to be defined yet for a couple more years, but they're working on it. So the youngest generation will be alpha. Okay. All right. So let's talk about how do we talk to everybody? Okay. So we're going to talk about high context, low context, and generations. So the first, if I can make my cursor work. The first one is, again, this is to give an idea what different cultures fall on high content and low content. And I think I need to give you a slide on what content is. Yeah, here. So high content and low content communication refers to the degree to which speakers rely on factors other than explicit speech to convey the message. Okay, so it's more than just using your words, it's using all the nonverbals that we talked about last week. Okay, so again, if you look across it, the high content is South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, or Arab, and Asian, and we are part of the lower content group. Okay, So at a high level, high contact, and I bolded this one because relationships are more important than schedules. And as you can see, American business people do not fall in that category. So it's all about building the relationships. So again, Julie is one that we're going to want to build a relationship and work on it. And again, the reason I bring up Julie is because anyone that comes from a country that likes the warmer side, they really want you to take the time to get to know them. You know, find out about their dog, find about their kids if they play soccer, find about grandma that's coming to visit. I mean, those relationships are so important. So again, we're going to assume that Julie has interacted with all of you guys. And if you have a meeting with Julie, starting the meeting with 5 minutes of sharing on both sides. It's not all about, let me hear about your life. You also need to be able to share about yours, because they want to build a relationship. So the relationship isn't one way. So I'm going to be soft and cuddly to Julie. You know, Julie wants something back. She wants to know that, you know, you had cataract surgery and you have to go back for a second. I mean, whatever Julie wants to know. I don't know. I don't know Julie. I can't ask her. But so again, the most important part on this side of the graph is it's all about the relationships. So again, think about the people that you work with, and they'll give you cues. Even if none of the maps are there, people will give you cues if they want to build a relationship. Okay, so again, this is a guide, but if somebody who does not fit on this higher context side starts talking about, you know, a soccer game or, you know, they went to Disney World, give them the opportunity because they are high context people. Okay, so again, I bucketed it, but it's still across the board. All right, so low context. Low context, we talked about who falls into that category. Low use of nonverbal communication. We don't pay any attention to our nonverbal cues. Okay, so, and I brought this up last week, is that we're all in this little box. And I'll give you a great example. I had to do a presentation yesterday morning. It was pre-recorded, so 45 minutes as they watched my presentation, and then I came in for 15 minutes to answer questions, and it was about negotiations. And I had 10 people that came in, and again, it was early. They came in, and everybody but 2 people had their cameras off. And like I said to you guys last week, and I say it every time, is, hey, you know, it would really be great if we could have a communication. This is all about kind of sharing. And so if it's at all possible, can you put on your camera? Well, the one person put on the camera, it looks like just you and I sitting here. The other guy put on the camera, he was laying in bed. I have been doing Zooms for a long time. Never in my career had I had somebody with disheveled hair. He had the phone on his chest. And luckily, I mean, and he was cool. I mean, he shared, but I mean, I couldn't miss a beat. And obviously we talked for 15 minutes and we went on. But again, it was an interesting, you know, he didn't think about it. He didn't think twice about the fact that I was in his bedroom and that he had watched he said, I watched the whole thing for 45 minutes. But anyhow, so short-term relationships. This side of the board is all about, we have a meeting, let's do our meeting, be done, move on. Okay, so neither side is right. But if we look at both sides, finding a way to blend is really, you know, in our business world, it's really not going to hurt the business if you took 5 minutes to talk to Julie or the Julies of the world. And again, here, low context people, it's about the schedule. And sometimes maybe the schedule isn't that important. So again, something to think about. And again, I work with a German company that's based in Harrisburg, and they are regimented with their schedule. And I have worked with them for 13, going on 14 years, and trying to build a relationship. There's a handful of people that I would know something about their family, but the rest of them, we meet, we move on. And again, that's a tightly wound, again, that's more of a German culture. But the schedule's more important. So as long as I kept coming in on time, I was accepted, but there was no shot of a relationship. Sherry.
wanted to point something out about Julie. Even though she falls into the high context, she was at the credit union for about a year or year and a half before I even knew that she had a daughter.
Okay.
She doesn't share anything,
Mm-hmm.
nothing. I don't know her husband's name, and I've sat next to her for the last 3 years.
Okay, but again, when we talked earlier about the Asian community, they will say yes and they will not, and they will do whatever. And then building trust and giving them a chance to build a relationship. And it might be something as simple as, my kid didn't go to school today because, I wouldn't say they had COVID. That would probably not be a good conversation, but that could help the conversation go.
Right.
Because again, they're more closed off, and it's not that they don't have any amazing life behind that veil, but they don't readily share.
Not at all.
Yeah. Is Julie still with us?
She is. Mhm.
Well, the homework assignment could be interesting when we get to that point. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about about professional communication is high context people say yes because, they understand, and low context say yes because they agree. So again, the nodding of the head may be, I got what you said, but I don't believe a thing that you said. Silence is displeasure for high context. Silence is thinking. So those 7 seconds become very important. Again, high context, saving face and respect. Fairness, honesty and a good deal is really important. While on the low context side, they want openness, they want equal opportunity, background checks for performance. So again, this is in your workbook, so you can kind of look at it if you want to take a deeper dive into it. But the one that jumps out at me most is the yes and the silence. Because again, when we typically hear yes, I believe that you agree with me and you're going to do what we just discussed you're going to do. And that is not necessarily the case more times than not. And again, I am like many of you, 7 seconds is murder to just have that pregnant pause to allow somebody to get their thoughts together. And those 7 seconds don't include me taking those 7 seconds for me to do this while you're doing the thinking. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about generational communication. Again, there's 77 million baby boomers. And again, 46 to, not that, the silent generation is probably our great grandparents. So I'm not spending any time talking about this, but there's still some baby boomers in the workplace. They are all about body language. And again, I'm bucketing it. They're all about body language than words. So if you are texting, they are not happy if you're in the middle of a conversation, okay? They really want in-person conversations whenever possible. So a face-to-face meeting for somebody that falls into this category is really important to them. So one thing that they don't like is controlling language. You do this and you need to do that. I mean, that edge of that in your mind, you may be thinking, well, we just need to get it done. It just is like nails on a chalkboard to this generation. So the reason that I wanted to share the in-person part here and face-to-face is, again, if we're having meetings and like right now we're Zooming, if all of my participants that wanted to take this class were in the baby boomer, everybody was in the baby boomer generation, they would probably push back to Vivian, our contact, and say, hey, when you guys have it on, face-to-face at the campus, I'll be there. Okay. So that is their go-to comfort zone. So if you're going to be meeting with somebody that you're in a different generation, like I said earlier, it's always important for us to go where they are. So, and it's not meaning physically go where they are, but where they're most comfortable. And if it's face-to-face, then give them face-to-face. And vice versa, they, as we move forward, need to do it for the others, for you guys. Okay, so it's not a one-way street. It's about both sides looking at who the generation is that you're working with. All right, so our Gen Xers, 65 to 80. I did not put in how many there are. There's like 32 million of you guys. It is they call it the sandwich generation. because there's 77 million over here and there's 90 million over here, and then there's just a small group in the middle. Okay, so not that you're inconsequential, but this group is most comfortable using all the channels of various communications. They know how to do it because they are used to, I hate to say it, dial up. They knew how to work it. Now it's obviously fast, but they knew what it was like. They got as technology was happening, it was introduced into their lives. So at an early age, so they get it. But they prefer communicating by email, but will take a phone call or a text. And if they have to, they'll do a meeting. So they're flexible in that. But if asked to do something, I'll just send an email. Okay. All right. So millennials, 90 million, 90.1 million, I think is the actual number. Their choice is email or texting. Give them an email opportunity or a text opportunity, and that you is there. One of the things that you have to think about when you're working with them is they really want to understand the why. This is probably the most educated group of people, and educated both in academics, but street smarts. So they want to understand the why. So if you're working with somebody and you give them a task, they want to know how it's connected to the bigger picture. Okay, so you wanted me to do a report on the expenses of everybody that call into the call center. I'm making it up. Okay, their question, Sherry, to you is going to be, so tell me why. And it's not offensive. It's not challenging authority. They just need to understand the bigger picture. So again, if you want to keep the millennials happy, tell them the why. The reason we're doing the call center and the reason that we're doing the Net Promoter Score. Why are we doing the Net Promoter Score? Why is it so important for us to do that? Okay, so, and again, I don't know if you use Net Promoter Score, but, tell them the why. So think about this generation, and as you're communicating and being, thoughtful in your demeanor with them, is share the why. Baby boomers don't care the why. You give me a job, I'll do it, because that's what we do. Okay, and Sherry, hopefully, if you guys disagree, please jump in. But this is basically what research has been showing us. Baby boomers don't need regular feedback. Get me a performance review once a year. It's important that we do it because you need it for a file in HR, then do it. This generation is looking for regular feedback. Tara.
I'm sorry. I would say that Generation X also want to understand the why. And I do, that's me. I want to know, I want regular feedbacks. So that's kind of like, I think it goes back and forth. You know what I mean? I think that understanding the why should be both in Generation X and Generation Y. And everybody I think, should want to look for regular feedback for anything that they're doing, personally.
So again, this is, yes, the answer is yes, I agree with you. But again, bucketing the generations, a baby boomer generation won't need to know the why. Millennial or an X, if you don't tell them the why, they'll go find a new job because they want to know their value of what they're doing is connected to something bigger than the job that they have. So yes, I mean, I'm willing to say that about the sandwich generation. No offense to you guys, you little guys. All right, so those are the millennials. Z is an interesting one. Statistics show that 72% of them want in person. Okay, baby boomers in person. X and Y, give me technology and I'll do it. This generation is coming back saying, you know what, come to my face and talk to me. 40% expect daily feedback from their boss on their performance. Okay, baby boomers, if you need to do a performance review once a year, okay, that's fine. X and Y's, we want some feedback, but we want to know the bigger picture. This one wants to know every day, am I doing good? And if we don't do it, then they feel like they've done something wrong. So their first go-to is, you didn't say, nice job. What did I do wrong? Are they going to fire me tomorrow? Okay, so it negatively affects this generation, again, more than others. Now, does that mean that if a baby boomer doesn't need feedback, that you don't give it to them? No, obviously, they've been in the workforce for I don't know, 35 years. So, but people still, if you were the boss of somebody that was a baby boomer, and even though they don't need feedback, if they're doing a good job, tell them. Or if they're doing a bad job, tell them. But this generation in particular really, really, really wants daily feedback. So think about the Z's that are in your world, or if you have family members that are Z's, kind of keep that in mind too. All right, any thoughts on any of the generations?
I have to disagree with Gen Z
Okay.
preferring in-person communication,
Uh-huh.
only because I'm thinking about my daughter and her friends.
Mhm.
They would much rather text or email than talk on the phone, or God forbid, speak to someone face to face.
Well, that's interesting because again, this is a statistic, but
Right.
I have also found that this generation is horrible at public speaking.
Absolutely.
So that's probably, if we had to, this isn't about gaps of each of the generations, and every one of them have gaps. This generation, because they've been glued to this, have not learned the art of public speaking. And so therefore it is difficult. So I found that statistic really interesting too, but it was McKinsey. I mean, McKinsey's a pretty reliable source for data. So
Very
again, you have to
interesting.
take all this with a grain of salt.
No, yeah.
And everybody's different. I mean, if some people are raised that it doesn't matter what your generation is, you may have Z's that you're raising in your family, but cell phones are not to be allowed in the house. They have to be 15 years old to do. I mean, all these other influences can change this. But overarching, I have found that this is the toughest generation is to make a presentation. So this would not be fun for them at all. Okay, so how do you recognize the communication preferences of others? We talked about high and low context. We talked about the different generations. So how do you recognize what their preferences are? What do you currently do?
I think the cues that they give off are very helpful in how they want to communicate. Like I said, with my daughter, she could be upstairs in the house, and instead of yelling down to me or, God forbid, walking down the stairs to come to the first floor, she'll text me, or she'll call me, or she'll FaceTime me. Why? To me, it's just laziness, but that's that generation. It's fine. But with other people, if, people that we work with, you can tell right away, it's that 7-second thing, not the first impression, but I can tell right away that person would rather me give them a phone call, or that person would rather answer an email. That person would rather I come to their office door, knock on their door, go in and sit down and have a chit chat. But I think it's the cues that people give that show you how they would like to communicate.
And Sherry, you make a great point, is that it's not a one size fits all.
No.
And it should never be. I mean, etiquette is supposed to be making the other person feel most comfortable. And so, but it goes both ways. Like I said, if you read me wrong, if you thought I wanted an email, okay, if you kept sending me email after email after email, so whatever cues I gave that said I wanted emails, and my responses were vague or obtuse, chances are that I was not telling you to your face, I was giving you vague and obtuse answers. We can say, hey, Tara, what do you prefer me to communicate with you? Now, some things HR would say, I need to have a paper trail. And, we all get that, so there are things that we have to write, and there are things that, cover our collective butts for, numerous reasons. But as a general communication, I saw a lot of you guys saying, we get 100 emails a day, is the email, if you look at them all objectively, forget personnel or generations at the moment. If you look at the 100, how many of those, if you walk down the hall or turn to the person at the call center, seat next to you, could they've been answered without having to cover your butt kind of thing? So again, the whole purpose of our time here today is to kind of look at it from a different lens. And, if we forget the legal part, we have to cover our butts, but look at it as, Sherry thinks she can read them pretty well. And, you know, it could be years of experience that has taught you that you can read them. But if you can't read them, or you're finding the way that they give you the information is not appropriate, then hey, what would be the best way for us to communicate should be part of our etiquette. You know, I want to work with you. I want to, you know, whatever's best for us together to get it done. Cool. Peyton or Al, any other thoughts? What do you guys, how do you recognize?
I don't think I can recognize it without straight up asking someone how they
Mhm.
prefer to communicate. Otherwise, I just assume everyone, at least in my job, is either an email or a phone call.
Mhm. So Peyton, tell us a little bit about what you do. I'm sorry, everybody else probably knows.
So I'm in the card operations department of my job. I work at Sunny's Federal Credit Union. When people need me in order to like help members, I usually get a phone call or an email. I prefer a phone call. That way I can give you a very fast answer to give back to the member. But if it's like fixing something or filing reports, emails are fine.
Mhm.
But I don't know off the bat what people prefer and how to communicate.
Okay.
So I would always have to ask them directly.
No, that's great. And Peyton, you're right on. Every job is different. There are some jobs, like I'm assuming, Tara, in the call center, you're not texting any of the people that are calling in.
I don't really work in a call center. I
Okay.
actually, I deal with the ACH processing. I'm in deposit operations.
Okay.
So for what I do, I deal with a lot of, like Peyton, a lot of dealing with internal and external customer service. So it's our front line calling us in the back office, asking questions about the members' accounts. So I help them with that. Yeah. So it's a lot.
And
Mhm.
do they ask you how you would like to be communicated with?
No, they just call. They just call. Or if they have like wires or something like that, they will email me, or I'm just calling them to kind of like sometimes I'll email them. Um, but it depends on the situation that I needed to be fixed right away. I have to call them. So most of the time it's them calling me and
Mhm.
asking for help. Yes.
Okay. Well, again, you know, as you have to respond back if you can't pick up the phone for whatever reason. And again, every job is different, and just think about the other person, especially if it's if you've got some cultural diversity, and you know, just keep it top of mind. I mean, asking is always the best. You know, so somebody calls in, Tara, and says, I need blah, 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 and you have to go do research. Hey, do you want me to call you back with the answer? Or do you want me to email the answer? Would
Mhm.
be one way of making sure that it's not, you know, you're doing it because I've always picked up the phone and called them.
Yes. Okay. Oh, let's keep it in mind. Yeah. Most of the time they want immediately, they prefer for me to call them back right away and give them the answer right then and there. So because they're currently with a lot of our frontline MSRs that we call them, member service representative. We have our members in front of them and they're looking for answers right then and there. So they want instant gratification.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it's like when they call, it's expected to give the answer right then and there, and without hesitation or delay, because they have the member in front of them, because we have people who haven't been in the seat long enough to tactfully say that sometimes these things have to take a while to do research or anything like that. So, you know, I understand where they're coming from because of that pressure that the member's giving them, and they're unsure of how to handle that. So when they call over to the back office, is always have a sense of urgency. So you have to kind of talk them off the ledge
Yeah.
and dial it back down and say, you know, this is what I can do. And this is what, you know, sometimes it will take a little bit longer to research that. And
Mhm.
sometimes, you know, you have to be assertive enough without being rude to tell the member that this is something that the back office has to look into, because they can't give you the answer right then and there. So
No, Tara, you bring up, you know, the greatest point that you emphasized is it's job specific. I mean, when I'm in my bank, I'm sitting there and they call a back office number and it goes into this, you know, elevator music that goes on ad nauseum. And then finally, after 20 minutes, you know, somebody picks up on that end. I'm already up to here with the 20 minutes. I don't need a, hey, I'll get back to you. So I mean, I have no idea if they ever got the call and they were just sitting on it for 20 minutes or what, but yeah, as somebody that's got to deal with customer facing, you know, that's the right answer. So your job has to help dictate it, but if there are things that aren't dictated by the job or the client, because obviously it's all about client service, is, you know, making sure that you're doing something, not because we always do it that way. Because right now we've got, you know, text and we've got email and we've got mail and we've got meetings and we've got chat on the corner of our screen. There's going to be something new coming up, you know, so, you know, we just have to pay attention. Elle, any thoughts or additions?
Yeah, to touch on what Tara had said, to speak on the other side of it though, because I'm on the front line, there are a lot of times where there's a member standing right in front of you and they're incredibly upset about, you know, whatever's going on. I actually just dealt with this with Tara and she helped me figure it out because I was doing a wire and a member gave me an incorrect routing number. I thought I had checked it correctly. And so I'm on the phone with Tara, we're emailing back and forth, like we were doing both, like for the portion of the morning. And she was really kind and helpful in helping me understand how to check the routing number in the future to make sure I do it correctly. But the members calling repeatedly and coming in and like checking on the situation, and we're like trying to figure it out for him. But we're like, you know, you have to come in and give us the correct information. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot we can do. So sometimes it gets a little tense.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. Yeah, no, that's great. And again, we have to keep in mind, you know, you guys are a client facing organization. That's, you know, the member relationship with a credit union and the members it's really relationship driven. I mean, your entire motto, not motto, but your entire mission is the relationship that you're building within the community. So it's tough when you have a client that was an idiot that didn't give you the correct number to begin with. But at the same time, we can't call them an idiot. You gave me the wrong number. We have to do what we have to do. Okay, good. All right. So we're running out of time and I started you late, so I don't want to go over, but I wanted to talk a couple minutes about the homework. I want you to meet with somebody from a different culture, if it's at all possible. Poor Julie is going to get all these people. She's going to have everybody coming in. Hey, how's your son? How's your daughter? If the opportunity arises that you can meet somebody from a different culture, kind of identify where they fall on the Lewis model, and then identify whether they are high or low context. And again, all this is in the workbook. Also find somebody, and again, it doesn't have to be work related. It could be, you know, in your personal life. Meet with somebody from a different generation, and how did you adapt your style to theirs? Your style to their communication preferences. And if you couldn't, did you have a conversation about it? Okay, so if you're not working with the person to, you could be at the grocery, talk to them about, hey, how do you like to communicate? Find out something about somebody that's another generation. And if you talk to Zs, find out about the face-to-face. Let's see if that statistic is accurate or not. All right. Any questions? Anything you need me to go over? All right.
Sorry, I was muted.
No, it's okay, Sherry.
Since week 2 wasn't showing, will the week 2 assignments be there, or do we have to wait until IT gets involved?
So when I hang up, Rich is my IT go-to guy, and he always emails me like at 6 o'clock at night. So when we're done here, I'm going to email him because I have to go through their queue because they track, IT, they track everything. So I will get you as quickly as I can. If he responds tonight, we're going to have an answer right away. I will get session 2 and session 3 up at the exact same time, because if I can do one, I can do 2. And again, the deadline for everything is basically make it Wednesday for everything, just before class for Thursday. And again, if you keep my cell phone number, again, you guys did a great job trying to track me down to find me. So we will hopefully not have to deal with this one next next session. I'd like to say, next session. I hope Marianne can't make it next session. That's my favorite. It's about networking. So we're going to talk about networking, I believe, is in our next session. It's either that or dining. Either way, we can eat and network at the same time. So if you have no questions, thank you for your persistence trying to get in. I really do appreciate it. Have a great week, and I will see you soon.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.